Hello, and welcome to the next video in the limited set review for Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Today I'm going to be talking about the black cards in the set. I'm going to be talking about how good I think the cards are going to be. I have not played with the cards. I haven't really done any testing with the cards. This is just before the set comes out, so don't come get mad at me when I'm wrong about stuff. Also, I'm like, I'm just kind of a guy. I'm just one guy, I'm just out here giving takes about cards. Am I decent at limited? Yeah, I'm okay. I've uh, mythical gamer. But at the end of the day, just talking about how good I think the cards are going to be, and that's it. So I'm going to be when I mention how good I think cards are. These are the tiers, sort of like that I use to evaluate them. There are five of them. Tier one is basically the good cards. Tier five are the bad cards. Anywhere in between, these sort of denotes how what the tiers actually mean. If you have not seen the tiers before. So, without further ado, let's just get right into the cards. First card is Abyssal Gore Stalker for black for a 6/6. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices two creatures. Um, sorry, I think this card is just cards like this that are expensive and require you to like sacrifice things in order, or else they don't get to enter the battlefield. They just require like a lot of setup. This one in particular is somewhat powerful because it does force your opponent to sacrifice things, but these like the each player sacrifices two things cards tend to be pretty bad. So I'm starting low on this, pretty low. You have in tier four here. Just expensive cards just aren't that valuable, and you really don't need I think you could probably play this, and it's not a complete nightmare. And it like in some game states it will be okay, but it just isn't. It just isn't consistent enough to be a good card. Next, I'll get. Oh no, we've already reached pronunciation problems. Dragon name, Deepest Betrayal. Three black for a 4/4 flying lifelink. When it attacks, each opponent discards a card. For each opponent who can't, you draw a card. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, you create a bat token with flying. And when it dies, return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control. It transforms into a land that can add black mana, or you can pay two in a black and transform it if only if a player has one or fewer cards in hand and only as a sorcerer. Yeah, this card's just busted. Um, yes, like it is like a well, if you just kill it, then it's not that bad. But if it ever attacks, like you just win because like you're attacking and you get life. It's a 4/4 like lifelink is just great here. Honestly, if this didn't have lifelink, I would be moving it down a tier. Because it can actually block pretty well with that lifelink. Like you can threaten blocks, where your opponent's like, well, I'm gonna attack, and like maybe I'll get to trade your thing. But even if you trade, like even trading off with this isn't that bad because you just get this land that you can transform back into it later. So like the trading, the worst case scenario with this type of card often is like, well, I play it on 5 and my opponent attacks past it and kills me. But you can like kind of feel free to just block with this because there aren't really any like the ways to exile are going to be costing them a card anyway, and they're going to be able to do it. They're going to do that pre-combat. So like this just is always going to be like trading for like more than one for one because you're getting a land on the backside that again eventually just comes back. It just and the great thing about this one in particular is that you get to control it, right? If you have one or fewer cards in hand, you can transform it back. It doesn't have to be your opponent. So this one's just really busted. Acolyte of Alcazaz, which we did the name of the dragon that I can't pronounce is back. Two and a black for a 1/4 vampire cleric types. I don't usually read the types. I don't know why I did this time. You can tap it and sacrifice another creature or artifact. Each opponent loses one life and you gain one life. I originally had this lower, but what I do is I go back and regrade all of the cards after I've seen the full set and like done all my grades. And it moved up. It moved up a tier for me. It was originally tier 4. This is going to be pretty annoying, and the fact that you get to drain your opponent is nice. Free sack outlet does actually matter. There are reasons that is like a thing that's good. It again blanks all your opponent's removal. It blocks okay. Stuff that I kind of like. Not a super like aggressive card really. Like you kind of do want the right deck for it. There is not a threaten as far as I could tell in this set. There's no active treason, so I don't actually think there's going to be like a steel sack deck. They printed too many good sack outlets, so they wouldn't allow it. There's actually, I know this is not the white video, but there are actually a lot of sack outlets in white too. So black-white really is the sacrifice deck in this format. So this is maybe like a black-white card, but in that deck it might actually be okay. Another chance. 2 and a black for an instant, you may mill 2 cards, which you're always going to do. Then return up to 2 creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. This being an instant is nice. Giving you the option to mill is nice. These type of effects still though are when they're 3 mana, they tend to be too slow and are like basically this is a divination, and divination is not a good card. So, like, yes, you get like some selection, but you don't actually get that much selection because a lot of times the creatures you're getting back are smaller unless you have a lot of self mill. If you have a lot of self mill, I can see this card being better for you again, which is why it's not tier 5, it's tier 4. But I think on the average deck, it's going to be pretty medium to bad. Bitter Triumph. 1 and a black for an instant. As additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card to pay 3 life. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. It's just nice, solid 2 mana removal. 3 life is a lot of life to be paying, though. And you are probably going to be paying it a lot. You don't really want to be discarding stuff, except in some cases. There will be some cases that discarding a card is fine. Perfect Vintage Cube card. It will be replacing, what's it called in the Vintage Cube? Just as a nice, perfect little replacement there. You do love to see that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, nice card, but nothing special. Some people will put this in like higher than me. There's just other removal that works just as well. Bloodletter of oh no, dude! Me not being able to pronounce the name of this dragon is just gonna haunt me for the rest of this video. 1 black for a 2/4 flying. If your opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. Yeah, this is just not good. Yes, I understand that when you get it onto the battlefield, it's oh, I get to attack for 1 billion, and they lose, double the amount of life that they. But like, no, this is a. You're paying, basically like this, like 1 black. If you're in mono black, this card is fine. Like this is a fine card. But people are gonna play this in like their black red deck, and it's just not gonna be good because you're basically gonna have to pay like six mana, 5-6 mana on this, and like that's kind of a night. Like not being able to cast your cards is a nightmare. And again, yes, if you get an attack through, you deal a bunch of damage, but you're also playing a 2/4 flying for 4 mana on blocks. That's really like 5 mana, and that's like really bad. And you just get attacked and like die. Like you're gonna have to block sometimes. I don't know. I think this is. I said worst card in the set. It's not the worst card in the set, but it is the least castable card in the set, and probably going to be the most overrated card by most people. Like you just once it's on the battlefield, it's going to be a problem. But like, it's so uncastable. I should probably move it to tier 4. To be honest with you, like tier 4, like I got very mad when I saw this card. I was very upset because I was like, oh, look at these freaking pips. I hate this triple pip. Nobody's ever casting this card. But it probably is actually just a tier 4 card, and I'm hating on it a little too much here. I probably would play this, but I definitely don't think you should pack 1 pick 1 this. This thing is just not. Like 4 mana, like if you think about this as like a 4 mana 4/4 flyer, which this is not as good as. This is actually worse than a 4 mana 4/4 flyer. Again, it does like if you have like 3 creatures that have good attacks already, this card's great. But if you have 3 creatures that have good attacks on turn 4 and you can cast this card, you're gonna be winning that game anyway. Like it doesn't help you. It doesn't improve your attacks at all. So yeah. Bloodthorn Flail. Single black mana for an equipment. You can equip creatures +2/+1, and you can equip by paying 3 or discarding a card. Again, this is uncommon for some reason. I don't really know why. I don't know. I'm not. 3 to equip is just so much. And I understand that you can discard a card, but discarding a card is like way more of a cost than paying 3. And like this just doesn't do enough. I'm just not seeing it. I'm not seeing it with most of these equipment. Again, equipment actually gets worse the more of it you have because you can't really just be spending all your time playing equipment and then equipping it. Like equipment just by definition has diminishing returns, and there's a lot of equipment in this set, so like the equipment actually is going to be worse than even it looks, I think. So yeah, I'm not super high on these. Bringer of the Last Gift. 6 black for a 6/6 flying. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, each player sacrifices all other creatures they control. Then each player returns all creature cards from their graveyard that weren't put this way to the battlefield. So it's like a living death or living end style of card effect. It's an 8 mana 6/6 flyer. I don't know why I should probably not put this in tier 5. I probably am underrating it. But again, I see 8 mana and I'm just like, who cares? Like, how are you ever getting to 8 mana? Like, 8 mana. What is it? What are we going to like turn 10, turn 11 of the game here? Like this is like we're gonna have we need a lot of mana to do this thing, and there's no guarantee that it's actually good for you. Like you have to have other stuff in your graveyard. Like eight, like if you just pay 8 mana for a 6/6 flyer, that's not a good rate. So you have to have other stuff in your graveyard already to enable it, and your opponent has to just not have anything in their graveyard at all in a set where there's a bunch of like self milling going on. I think a lot of times what happens is you play this and then your opponent attacks you for lethal. I think that's just like what happens, because like they get like let's say you get back 2 creatures and they get back like 3 creatures. Or two. Maybe you just each get back 2 creatures, and your 2 creatures are like a three, like two. Let's just say each of you get back 2 3/3s. Like, is this good for you? I don't know. Like, yes, they say like yes they lose their whole board, and yes you lose your whole board. So like you're ahead, but like I don't know. I don't think you're like that far ahead. It seems really hard for me to like break this to me. Like I'm sure you can do cool stuff with it. It is a rare or whatnot. I mean, it's got rare text on it. I just again like 8 mana cards. I'm trying to think though. Like this is one of those cards because I've in the past underrated cards like this, like Breach the Multiverse. This is not as good as Breach the Multiverse, obviously, because it doesn't enable itself. But I'm just thinking like if like my question is if I cast this, how often am I just winning straight up? And I think the answer is like not 100% of the time. If you cast an 8 drop and you're not winning like 80% of the time that you cast it, is a bad card because it's just gonna sit in your hand for the entire game and not do anything. So yeah, I'm off this. If it impresses me, it impresses me. Blood Rage, Mycoid. 3 and a black for a 4/3 at the beginning of your end step. If you descended this turn, create a 1/1 black fungus creature token with this creature can't block. Seems really solid to me. One of those cards that you're going to want to play post combat because you want to attack first. It is, to be sure, if you just play it on turn 4 as a 4/3, it's not the best. But again, like you can find ways to trade off and stuff, and it's not a complete nightmare. So like, even if it doesn't make a 1/1 the turn it enters the battlefield, it's not a nightmare. But yeah, just seems solid to me. It's a repeatable way to just generate some stuff, and I like that quite a bit. Canonized in Blood. 1 and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if you descend to this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And you can pay 7 mana and sacrifice this and create a 4/3 white and black vampire with flying. I don't know why you would want to do that, but it certainly is allowed. I don't know. This type of effect tends to be really, really, really bad and limited. Like oh well, if I just like have a creature in play, and then if this thing happens, and I still have the creature I want in play, and my opponent doesn't have mana up, this is fine. But if any of those things isn't true, you just don't get any value off of this. Yes, you can pay 7 to make a 4/3. Sure, I don't know. Like a 4/3 flying usually would cost like 4 mana. So like yes, like it would probably be above rate at 4 mana, but like let's say it costs 5 mana normally, like this is like, oh, man, this just is not a good rate for that. Like yes, it's like giving you like extra value or whatever, but I'm not no. Like I feel like you're more likely to descend as the game goes on, Like this helps you descend, yeah, but like you're paying the whole I don't know, this is very bad. Chupacabra Echo. 2 black for a 3/2. Fathomless Descent. When it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. Really good. This is a really good card. Obviously, it requires some enabling, but it's not as good as the original Chupacabra. But again, not an insult. You can be not as good as the original and still be pretty good. And this one's still pretty good. You like all you need to do is get this to -2. Like even if this is like -1/-1, you'll find an X1 and target it, and this will be like that's a really good card. And that's like the base. Like that's like the absolute worst. Because you just like play like if you think about like how a typical game of limited goes, it's like okay, each of you plays a 2-drop trade off. This gets -1/-1 to something, and then you're like whatever, and then you're up. Stuff like that. And that's your worst case scenario. So I think it just really is a really good card. Corpses of the Lost. 2 and a black for an enchantment. Skeletons you control get +1/+1 and have haste. When it enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 black skeleton pirate creature token. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, you may pay on life if you return this to its owner's hand. So, I don't know. I was waffling about where to grade this card. Originally, I had it lower, but I kind of talked myself into it. The reason I talked myself into it is it's okay. So the first it comes in, it's a 3 mana 3/2 haste. 3 mana 3/2 haste is pretty bad, but it is another permanent, and you can make infinite 3 mana 3/2 hastes by just paying a life and then just like bringing it back to your hand if you descend. And it's not that hard, right? Like it's not that hard to descend, genuinely. Do note that there are basically no other skeletons in the set. This is basically only enabling itself. If there were other skeletons, this card would be higher, but I don't know about that. I don't think there's any other skeletons, so this is kind of just like its own thing. But yeah, I think it actually, just repeatable value engine is nice. So yeah, that's about it. Deadweight. 1 mana for an enchantment. Enchanted creature gets -2/-2. Yeah, this is really good. It's even better in this set because of Descend. It triggers Descend by itself when it goes to the graveyard. Yeah. I don't know. Nothing really else to say here. It's just, solid removal. Really good. Gonna be really synergistic in this set too, so should be really good. Deathcap Marionette. 1 and a black for a 1/1 with Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, you may mill 2 cards. So again, I originally, when I went back through my original grades, I determined that this was probably a little too low. I had it at tier 4, and I was like, no, I think I'm gonna be okay playing this. Just milling again. Anything that mills cards is just really, really important. Like, the thing you have to understand is that when they print cards like this, where it's like, a lot of times they'll print cards that's like, well, we've seen that card before, and like 2 mana 2 mana 1/1 Death Touch just isn't that good. It doesn't really cut it. But in this particular case, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt because I think that they know well enough at this point that 2 mana 1/1 Death Touch just is not good enough. I think they've given it just enough juice here that it's gonna be pretty decent and pretty annoying. There's not a ton of X1 hate like there was in the last set either, so it is going to be annoying and give you some value and whatnot. Probably Descend for you, most likely. Deep Goblin Skulltaker. 2 and a black for a 2/2 menace. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. This card is awful. Every single card that has ever been printed that looks anything like this card has been an F and like a tier 5 card. Like every single one of them, without fail, has been horrible. No matter what, every single time anybody ever thinks that a type of card like this is good, like, it is always a disappointment. It will be bad. Yes, this one has menace. I don't care. It's a 3 mana 2/2. It's garbage. Moving on. Deep Cavern Bat. 1 and a black for a 1/1 flying lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, look at target's opponent's hand. You may exile an online card from it until it leaves the battlefield. Really solid card. Nice. Like, this type of card is just really good. You get to look at your opponent's hand, which is always good. You get to exile. You get to, like, prevent them from doing something. They probably have to use a removal spell on this, because it's flying, too. So you're basically, it's a 1-for-1, but you are, like, you get information to, like, play around the other stuff, which is worth, depending on how good of a player you are, it's worth a decent amount. And, yeah, it's just nice to have cards that are like this, that give you a lot of optionality and flexibility, and this even has lifelink, which is nice too. Defossilize. 4 and a black for a sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature explores, then it explores again. Yeah, this type of card just is never very good, and a double explore I don't think is going to save it. Yes, maybe you could draw 2 lands. Congratulations, I'm happy for you, you did it. But I'm just not super interested in this type of card. Yes, there's going to be some self-milling, so like it'll be easier to enable than usual, but I still think that the rate is just too bad. Echo of Dusk. 1 and a black for a 2/2, Descend 4. As long as there are 4 more permanent cards in your graveyard, Echo of Dusk gets +1/+1 and has lifelink. Yeah, this card's really good. So it's just a 2-drop that you can play on turn 2, and then at some point during the mid game, it just becomes a 3/3 lifelink. A 3/3 lifelink in limited is just enormous. I try to think about the 3/3. The difference between 2/2 and 3/3 is, I think, the largest difference in terms of how much stats a creature can have in limited. A 3/3 is just so much more significant than a 2/2 because it blocks so much higher percentage of things. And I don't know. I think this is just really, really strong because it is a 2-drop that also like becomes better later. Yes, I understand that you do need to enable it, but like if you're like you do need to enable this card. Obviously, you need to have like self mill in your deck, but like even if you have it, it's just great. And again, it can trade off early, and it's not a nightmare. Like you can play it on 2, and it just becomes better later on. I like it a lot. Fanatical Offering. 1 and a black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature, draw 2 cards and create a map token. Nice solid card. We've seen Deadly Dispute. This is Deadly Dispute. There are questions about whether or not it's better than Deadly Dispute. I think it's probably worse. Treasures are probably better than map tokens, but you know, it is what it is. You can't ask for much more than this in your sack outlets. You know, do play around this card though. Something to note in terms of like playing around tricks and stuff. Fungal Fortitude. 1 and a black for an enchantment with flash. Enchanted creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+0. When enchanted creature dies, return to the battlefield tapped with insertion control. Yeah, these cards just generally aren't very good. 2-mana version is actually like even worse than usual. I don't know. It's a permanent. It's an enchantment, so that's like nice. It's nice that you you get to have a permanent that you know goes into your graveyard and descend and all that, but 2 mana for this effect is just too much. I think. I have some hope. Like there's some hope for this card. Like I do think it could be good actually, but I'm not. I'm not. You know, we're not raising any banners yet here. Gargantuan Leech, 7 and a black for 5/5. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each cave you control and each cave in your graveyard. It has lifelink. So it's a large lifelink guy, which is good. It's very strong when you get it into play. But what would you pay for a 5 mana 5, or what would you pay for a lifelink? I think 5 mana for a 5/5 lifelink is would probably be okay. So that's where you need to get to. That's 3 caves. It's kind of a lot of caves. Now it is like before turn 5, so it is probably doable. I don't know. I'm not a huge believer in the cave stuff until I see it happen. And again, I'm gonna be even less like this again. The cave stuff is like a week 1 thing where you get a lot of people that don't draft very often. Like if the cave stuff is functional, it's going to be very good in like the first 2 weeks, and then it's going to be terrible because people are going to actually know that it is a thing, and then it's not going to be draftable anymore. So yeah. Grasping Shadows. 3 and a black for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gains Death Touch and lifelink until end of turn. Put a dread counter on this. Then if there are 3 more dread counters on it, transform it. It transforms into a land that taps for black mana. And you can pay black and remove a dread counter from the land, and you draw a card and lose 1 life. So the backside of this card is pretty good, but again, 4 mana is just so much to be not impacting the board. But Death Touch lifelink. Yes, but the creature has to not only attack, but it has to attack alone, which, you know, like this obviously is not a card that is trying to kill your opponent quickly. It's trying to stabilize you more. I don't know, man. Maybe this card's just gonna be busted, but like 4 mana is just so much. Like, if you got like a card up front, this card might still not even be that good. Because there's just some scenarios where you don't have, like there's a lot of scenarios where your 3-drop just trades with their 3-drop, and then it's just not good. Like it's still like yes, you gain some life, but I don't know. Like a lot of times there are trades available from your opponents, and they're just gonna take them, and then you're gonna be like, oh, well now I don't have any. I spent 4 mana doing nothing, and now my opponent's board is much bigger than mine. So I don't know. I'm concerned about this card. Greedy Freebooter. Single blue mana for a 1/1. When it dies, scry 1 and create a treasure token. So this is a nice little sack enabler. Treasure tokens and scrying are nice, and like you're gonna want this thing to die, but you're gonna have plenty of ways to sacrifice it for value and stuff. So I think that you're gonna want to play this in pretty much every black deck. I don't think you're gonna ever want to get rid of it. It just seems like a really super solid card to me. Join the Dead. 1 black for an instant. Target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn, and descend forward gets -10/-10 until end of turn. Instead, if there's 4 more permanents in your graveyard. -5/-5 is probably big enough to just kill everything in the set. It'll kill most things without the Descend, so you probably don't need to worry about it. The real concern with this card is that it is double pipped, and that is very bad. You do not want that, and that's why it's a tier down. It's tier 3 instead of tier 2, because it's double pipped, and double pipped removal is significantly worse, because essentially this costs like 3.5 mana, which is a lot more than 3 mana. So, be advised. Malicious Eclipse. 1 black for a sorcery. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. If a creature opponent controls would die, exile it instead. Typical, like, this effect is never good. It's not going to be good in this set. There's not, like, you can side it in sometimes. Like, it doesn't really do anything in the main deck. Mephitic Drought. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I pronounced every part of this card wrong. 1 and a black for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. So again, this is kind of similar to a Ichor Wellspring type effect. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. Like, I think Ichor Wellspring was a solid card in Brothers War. This card has similar synergy stuff going on in this set. Yes, you have to lose a life, but, you know, greatness at any cost and whatnot. So, I think this will be pretty solid. Preacher of the Schism, 2 and a black for a 2/4 with Death Touch. When it attacks with the player with the most life or tied for the most life, create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. When it attacks while you have the most life or are tied for the most life, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. So, if you're tied on life, you get to do both. Look at that. Anyways, it doesn't matter if you can do both. This card's just nuts, because if it, like, has an like, this is just really good, like, because it always has good attacks, and it always has good blocks, and it always has like value on attacking. This card reminds me of the soldier from Brothers War, the 2/3 flyer. It reminds me of that card because it sort of does similar things, where it just makes guys and then you can draw cards later. Like, it just is really good and annoying to play against. Primordial Gnar. 4 and a black for a 5/2. When it dies, discover 3. These type of cards tend to not be very good because A, it's 5 mana, so you can't play that many 5-drops in your deck, and B, like, I don't know, like, there's exile, there's other removal, there's just ways to get around this card. Like, it trades with a 2-drop, like a 2-drop? Like, is it really a 5-drop if it trades with a 2-drop? The answer is, like, no. Like, a 5/2 stat line is it's not good on a 5-drop, you know? Like, this has like Testament Bearer type vibes, but the problem with that comparison to Testament Bearer is that Testament Bearer was 4 mana, which is considerably better. Like, a 4 mana 4/1 is probably a better stat line than a 5 mana 5/2. Just because it trades with basically the same stuff, but is like a mana cheaper. So, I don't know, I'm not super thrilled about this card. Queen's Bay Paladin, 3 black for a 5/4. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, return up to 1 target. Vampire card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it, you lose life equal to its mana value. Yeah, I don't think this card's very good. There just aren't enough vampires in the set for it to do very much. It's like a 5 mana dual pipped 5/4 is just not very good, and you're not going to be able to enable the vampire thing, so I just don't think the card's very good in general. I think it's like, whatever. Like, you can probably play it and it's not going to kill you, but I don't think it's very good. Rampaging Spiketail. 4 black for a 5/6. When it enters the battlefield, target creature you control gets +2/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn, and it has Swamp Cycling for 2. So, this is a cycler. This, I think, is one of the better ones because it is cheaper, but I don't know. I'm not super into the cyclers because the 2 mana cycling we found in March of the Machine to be way too slow. Like, you were paying too much mana. They're probably fine. Again, I probably should put them in like the tier 3 for most of them, but I don't know. Just Descend. I don't know. Maybe I should put this, especially in black, actually. This one should, you know what, I'm going to move this one up. Hold on. The magic of editing. Look, at now it's in tier 3. This one does seem better to me than the other ones. It is cheaper and also has a nice ETB, and also, like, Descend matters more in black than a lot of the other colors. Like, and also turning on the Descended stuff is pretty good. So I think this will actually be solid. Ray of Ruin. 4 and a black for sorcery, exile target creature, vehicle, or non-basic land, scry 1. Look, you know how I feel about land removal. I do love it. So there is that element of this. I do like that, but otherwise not super great. Just 5 mana, just too expensive. Just too expensive. The scry 1 doesn't make up for it. It's sorcery. Like, it just is not enticing. Screaming Phantom. 2 and a black for a 2/2 flying. When it attacks, mill a card. This card is terrible because it's a 2/2 flyer for 3 that doesn't do anything when it enters the battlefield, and those cards are bad. I understand that it mills when it attacks. Who cares? It's terrible. Don't play it. Skull Clap, Snail. It is not Skull Clamp. I wish that it were. 1 and a black for a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent exiles a card from their hand. We've seen this card several times. It exiles, which actually is like even better than usual. Very solid card. Very good. You know, like you just play this, your opponent's down a card. You get like you're going up a resource when you play this card, right? You have a 1/1. They don't have a card. It's nice. It's really good. And again, it doesn't go to their graveyard, so it doesn't turn on any of their descend stuff. Really like this card. Good for sack stuff too. It just really does quite a bit. I actually probably could even put it in tier 2, but it's a really solid card. Soul Coil Viper. 2 and a black for a 2/3. You can pay black and sacrifice it. You can tap it too. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with the finality counter. Activate only as a sorcery. I don't understand why they printed this card, to be honest with you. It seems terrible. I don't. What if I made my reanimation effect 4 mana on a creature that can just get removed, and then also the thing that it reanimates gets a finality counter? I don't know. I genuinely couldn't tell you. This card just seems awful. Souls of the Lost. 1 on a black for a star and a star +1. As additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card or sacrifice a permanent. Fathomless Descent, its power is equal to the number of permanent cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. Yeah, so it's like a Goyf variant. It's probably okay. I don't know. Like it's large, but on turn 2, you're making a 2/3, or no, you're making a 1/2 because like just by itself. Later in the game, you can make like a bigger guy. I don't know. I'm just not super interested in this. The having to sacrifice stuff to cast it is actually like more of a downside than it is an upside. I understand that you like can like discard stuff and get value, but it just isn't super great. Doesn't look super great to me. So I'm putting it in tier 4. Stalactite Stalker. 1 black mana for a 1/1 menace. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put +1/+1 counter on it, and you can pay 2 and a black and sacrifice it, and target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is this creature's power. Yeah, really strong. Really strong card. You play it on 1 and you take over the game, and if you play it on like turn 4, it's more likely that you descended, so it starts growing immediately. Just really good. Just really good. Just early cheap card that interacts later, like just does quite a bit of work, and that's why I put it in tier 1. Starving Revenant. 2 black for a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 2. Then for each card you put on top of your library, you draw a card and you lose 3 life. Whenever you draw a card, if there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard, target opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. Yeah, tier 1 might be a little bit much for this, but I don't know, I really like it. You get to decide if you want to draw cards, you get to decide if you want stuff to go into your graveyard. It helps enable Descent. Descend 8 is going to be pretty tough to enable, in my opinion, without the game just being over. Like, Descend 8 seems really hard. Like, it seems it's going to be really difficult to get there without a lot of support. And the support cards, like, again, Descend 8 will be doable early in the set, but I think that as the set progresses and people know what the good enablers are, it's actually going to become pretty difficult to do Descend stuff because people are going to be taking the support cards correctly. And so it's going to be tough to make cards like this like as good. But I still, 4 mana 4/4, like draw 2 cards, lose. Like, yes, you lose, like, it's 6 life. That's a lot of life to be losing to draw 2. But you can just throw stuff in your graveyard and like basically if you read this as 4 mana 4/4, like mill 2, and sometimes you're going to pay 3 to draw a card instead. Sure, seems really good to me. Stinging Cave Crawler. 2 and a black for a 1/3 death touch. When it attacks, if you have Descend 4, if there are 4 more permanent cards in your graveyard, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Yeah, so this having a nice little attack trigger, again, as I said, Descend 4 I think is significantly easier to enable than Descend 8, so it's going to be much more easy to enable, but I still think this card's not amazing because it doesn't block super well and is just kind of awkward on 3, but, it's solid. I don't think it's anything bad. Like, I don't think it's bad or anything. I also don't think it's super great. This is not Morbid Opportunist, is basically my view on this card. Synapse Necromage. 2 and a black for a 3/1. When it dies, create 2 1/1 black fungus creature tokens with this creature can't block. This card seems pretty good to me. Just because, gives you a lot of bodies to work with. You're going to want to have things that sacrifice. I don't really know why this is an uncommon. I feel like it could have been a common. I don't know. I don't think it would have been too strong. Black's commons don't seem especially great to me. But yeah, I mean, like, it's totally serviceable card. Trades up with like everything because it makes two things that things can't block, so that is kind of a downside. I don't love that. But yeah, I think the card will be solid. Taran's Taran's Journal. One in a black for a legendary artifact. You can tap it to sacrifice another artifact or creature and draw a card. Activate only as a sorcery, and you can pay 2 and discard your hand to transform it. It transforms into a land with the ability to add black mana or tap to cast a creature spell from your graveyard this turn. If you do, it enters the battlefield with the finality counter on it and is a vampire in addition to its other types. Yeah. Cool card. You know, like, I think this card is really cool. And might just be really good. But I also think that it's kind of like the fact that you can only sacrifice as a sorcery is concerning. The discard and transform thing is kind of cool because you can like cast things from your graveyard. I don't know. I love this card. I'm gonna be taking this card like it's way better than this to start out, because I think it's really cool and fun. But I do think that I do have a lot of concerns about the card because it's very slow and it's only sorcery speed. But yeah, I mean, if you like, this card is a build around. This is a build around card. You have to build around this card. You have to have stuff that you want to sacrifice. But when you do, it's going to be great. You know, I actually think I'm going to move it to tier 3 later. I'm not going to do the magic of editing this time because I'm lazy, but I think I would move this up a little bit, actually. Just because, like, I want to believe, you know what I mean? I want to believe that this isn't too slow. But, like, again, paying to discard your hand to, like, then next turn be able to cast stuff is kind of concerning. Again, that's, like, a late game ability, but then you can't do the sacrifice thing anymore. It's kind of awkward. I don't know. Terror Taida. 2 black for a sorcery. Fathoms descent. All creatures get -X until end of turn. X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. I like this card quite a bit. Again, I do have some concerns about the idea that, you know, you have to get to a certain floor for this to do the thing. Like, you can't just do the Wrath thing of like, well, I'm just gonna not play anything for 3 turns. You do have to play stuff, but the effect is really strong. That's why it's not tier 1. I have it in tier 2 instead. If it just like were the Domain Wrath from DMU, it would go back to tier 1, but I don't think it's that. If it plays like that, it will be a tier 1 card, but I don't think it's going to. I think it's going to be a little bit worse. But I still think totally solid control card. Again, you need to have a bunch of self-mill enables. But once you get this to -3, it's totally an okay card, and if you get it to anything higher than that, it's busted. So, Tithing Blade. 1 and a black for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. You can pay 4 and a black to craft it with a creature to make a thing at the beginning of your upkeep. Each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. I can't imagine you're ever doing that because that seems really bad. But I guess you could in like the late game when you have stuff in your graveyard. I actually like this card quite a bit. It's a nice edict effect that gives you like an artifact thing in play, and then you can like sacrifice it later. Like, I don't know, I like it quite a bit. It does enough for me. Now again, the danger of this is like, oh well, I enabled my opponents like descend stuff and whatnot, and like their whatever, which is actually kind of real. Like if you play this and your opponent has like a 1-drop to sacrifice, you're kind of just losing the game because it's not great. But you do still get the material out of the deal, so I think it's okay. It also is not an equipment, which it looks like, so you know what? I'm pretty mad about that. Visage of Dread. 1 and a black for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an artifact or creature card from it. That player discards that card. Craft with 2 creatures, 5 and a black, and you can transform it into this 5/4 menace that enters the battlefield or attacks. You may mill 2 cards. Yeah, this card's really good. You do need 2 creatures to craft, but I don't care. The front side's good enough, and you can just use the front side to craft with something else. So, yeah, really strong. Again, not impacting the board directly, which does bring with it some concerns, but, you know, you are you're getting removal, essentially, and you're preventing your opponent you're disrupting your opponent's game plan, which is very nice. And the last card in black, Veto's Inquisitor. 3 and a black for a 3/3 Vampire Knight. It has the ability to pay 1 black mana to sacrifice another creature or artifact and put a +1/+1 counter on it. It gains mana until end of turn. It is not capped. It is not, you know, sorcery speed. Unfortunately, the base rate is a 4 mana 3/3, and 4 mana 3/3s are unplayable, so I'm putting it in tier 4, and if it somehow, like, if the ability really is that good, then it will move up, but, yeah, no. 4 mana 3/3 is, like, it's not, no, 4 mana 3/3 is not just bad. Like, it's not, like, just bad, it's, like, it's pretty bad. Like, it's pretty bad. It does gain menace and stuff, you can just, like, pump it a bunch and kill your opponent, I get it, but I don't. I'm not seeing it. I'm simply not seeing it. And that's the black cards. I've talked about all the black cards. My overall view on black in this set is that, you know, there's some good rares and some awful rares and some, like, you know, I don't know. I don't have like a I don't tend to do like a, oh, this color's going to be great type deal. I could look at my like grades based on the my number of ratings for each card and do like an average or whatever, but I don't know. I'm that's like a project for future me. Current me doesn't do things like that. Anyways, if you enjoyed, that's great. If this was helpful to you in some way, I don't know how it would be, but you know, because I'm literally just a dude that's talking about random cards. If you enjoyed it, that's great, and I hope you watch the other ones because they'll be basically the same as this. Um, Thanks for watching. See ya.